this slide is telling you that we're going to have some calculator questions. Okay. Next test, you're going to have a calculator page and a no calculator page. But what they're telling you here is make sure you change it to degrees. Okay. Make sure you're in degree mode, or else all of your answers are going to be wrong here on these. When you see a calculator question, I think it's going to be obvious that it's a calculator question. Right? You'll have like a messed up looking decimal, or you might have minutes, I suppose. Basically, you're going to have something that you couldn't do from the chart. Numbers in the chart are usually going to, end in 0 or 5 or something, nice multiples of 15 or something like that. But these ugly-looking numbers are going to be calculated problems. So we look at sine 49 degrees 12 minutes, and most of your calculators don't have DMS. And so for most of us, we're going to need to do what we did earlier in the chapter, and that's convert. So remember back a couple of sections, converting minutes to decimals, we would divide by 60. 12 divided by 60 is 0.2. And so we're looking at sine 49.2 degrees. And if you get there, then really all we do is plug that in. Make sure we're in degree mode. Yes. Sine 49.2. And we get this decimal number, 0.7570. 0.7570. What's going to end up happening at some point is we're going to have to talk about sig figs. And in that problem, there are 4 sig figs, and so that's how I know where to round off my answer. When in doubt, round off to 4 decimal places, so I guess. The next one's a little bit harder. As you may know, that you don't have a secant button on your calculator, and neither do I. But we don't really need one if we know how secant works. We know secant, or we should know secant is 1 over cosine. So start with that. If secant is 1 over cosine, we're just going to have to type in 1 over cosine 97.977. 1 over cosine 97.977. I see 5 sig figs, and so that's what I round off to. Part C, I know 1 over cotangent. That's a reciprocal. 1 over cotangent is tangent, so I have to change it back to something that's on my calculator. 1 over cotangent is tangent, so it's going to be tangent 51.4283 degrees. Tangents 51.4283. 1.25395. 6 sig figs. 1.25395. Now that's not degrees. Don't put a degree symbol by it. That's not degrees. So then the next one, okay? The next one, all you have to do is type it in. I'm not going to be able to do it on my calculator. My calculator has a bug in it that won't let it work. That's not going to give you me the answer on that calculator. So you type it in. Sine negative 246. Did you get something like 0.914? 0.914? That's what you got? Okay. There you go. I see 26 things in that. Now, one thing I want to remind you of is remember range. Don't think of range as the y values. I don't see a y on my screen. Think of range as output. What comes out of the calculator, basically. And when we were talking about sine and cosine, it had to be a number in between -1 and 1. Remember that? That's going to come up at some point. And when we were talking about tangents and cotangents, it could have been anything. And so, here we've got that. We had sine. We had the sine numbers that ended up in a number between -1 and 1. And when it was cosecant or secant, it had to be not between -1 and 1. And so that's what we had up there. So don't forget about range. That comes back at some point in a big way, maybe here a little bit in this one. Okay. Example 8 just basically goes back. It says use inverse trig functions to find the angles. Okay, we're using a calculator. You can tell it's going to be a calculator question because the decimal numbers are messed up. They're really ugly looking decimals. But think about solving an equation. Okay, anytime you solve an equation, you're undoing operations. If I was going to solve that, I'd get rid of the plus 5 by subtracting 5. And then I'd get rid of this times 2 by dividing 2. When we solve equations, we're undoing operations. And that's exactly the same thing when we want to isolate this variable. If I wanted to isolate that theta, I have to undo the sine function. And what's going to undo the sine function is the inverse sine function. And so, in order to isolate theta, we take the inverse sine of that big long decimal. Inverse sine, inverse sine 0.9677091745. Should have got something in the vicinity of 75.4. 75.4. Okay, is that what we got? Notice we are inside the interval from 0 to 90. We got 75.4. Now, part B is a little bit trickier. Because there's no secant, there's no inverse secant button on there. What we want to do is convert to the reciprocal. Okay? We want to convert to the reciprocal. Now, I know that secant is the reciprocal of what? What? Cosine. Cosine. And so what I can do is take the reciprocal of both sides. The reciprocal of secant is cosine, and the reciprocal of 1.05 is 1 over 1.05, 45829. This is a really tricky question. This is really tricky. Okay, so if you want to isolate the variable, we're going to have to take the inverse cosine of that reciprocal. 1 over 1.0545829. Oops. Never got the inverse cosine part. That's kind of important. Inverse cosine of that reciprocal. Inverse cosine of that reciprocal. If you do this in the wrong order, you're going to get an error. If you do it in the right order, you're going to get 18.5. Okay? Now, I'm not worried about sig figs here. There's too many. I'm not going to ever make you do an 8 sig fig problem. So when in doubt, you can round up from here on your own. 18.51. Anybody get an error? Anybody get an error? Okay. Sometimes people try to plug it in the wrong order, and if you did something like this, that's not the same thing. Okay. That's not the same thing as what I typed in before, and that's giving me an error. All right, and that should have given you an error as well. So you've got to make sure you put it in the right order.